Sending prayers a Hail Mary could save their churches.
For me, it was heartbreaking because it's like a little stab in your heart for your it's almost like family.
We'll show you which Greek churches in Toronto may soon be up for sale. And a mother's heart-wrenching reaction to the release of the man who killed her 3 young children. Why drunk driver Marco Muzzo is only serving about half his sentence behind bars.
We're asking those in areas with higher infection rate to not come here.
And finally open for business, but stay off our ski hills. The small towns drawing a big line in the snow, and who's being asked to chalet away. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. In just about an hour, some regions in Ontario will lift many COVID restrictions. The rest of the province isn't too far behind. We'll get into those details in just a few minutes, but the pandemic's devastating financial impact is already being felt on many, and that includes the Greek community of Toronto. Tonight, after more than 100 years in operation, the group is announcing their beloved churches may soon hit the market. Farah Morelli looks at the biblical letdown for some in their church community.
From weddings to baptisms to holiday services, the walls of this church hold decades worth of memories. Memories a community wants to hold on to.
These are extremely tough decisions. Nobody on the board wanted to make these decisions.
The charity group Greek Community of Toronto operates 4 churches. It says COVID-19 put a halt to its services, weddings, and the dozens of other events it used to fundraise. The group says it's now staring down a debt of $4.5 million.
All the fundraising events we were able to have in the past, we can't do no more. So 90% of our revenue is gone right off the bat.
The group sent a note to its members yesterday saying the situation is so dire, it's now looking at options to sell at least one of its 4 buildings that serve as churches and community centers.
It's like a little stab in your heart for your it's almost like family, because you look back and that's where we all went.
It's news that's devastating for community members like Zoe Marie Ginaglu-Pateris, who runs dance programs like these at the centers and was even baptized at one of the churches herself.
Yes, I know it's bricks and mortar and you can be rebuilding or buy another center or do something along the line, but the history is tied into them, and it's very gut-wrenching.
It's a history that dates back to post-World War II times, when the Greek community began to grow in the city.
And I think that each of these properties are a symbol of how important the church has been and the community organization in order to build a church has been in order to form a community here in Toronto. So it's really a central pillar in community function and development.
The Greek community has gone through some financial difficulties, especially around 2010.
The charity acknowledges it had financial struggles before the pandemic hit, but claims COVID dealt the fatal blow.
If we can actually get together and unite and save what we have, whether you're for or against, but if you want it there, you have to help out.
Community members are now hoping for a Hail Mary, one that can keep these walls and the stories from inside alive. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
Good news to share with you tonight on the fight against COVID-19. With just more than 1,000 new cases, today Ontario reported the fewest number of new infections since early November. The persistent downward trend comes as 3 regions exit lockdown next hour. The regions include Kingston, Hastings, and Renfrew. People in those areas will wake up tomorrow in a green zone, the most relaxed stage of the province's color-coded framework. It'll mean life can pretty well return to normal with indoor dining, salon services, and many businesses returning to operation. 28 other Ontario regions will see restrictions relaxed next week, but it'll still be life in lockdown for Toronto, Peel, and York for at least another 2 weeks. And people in those 3 hot zones especially are being asked not to leave their areas to go to places where more businesses are open. That includes ski and snowboard hills. Those winter rec spots have been given the green light to reopen. But as Greg Ross reports, even with new safety protocols in place, local mayors are pleading with citizens in hot zones to stay away.
We've been running the snowmaking gun all through January and December.
The conditions on the hills at Blue Mountain Ski Resort are just about as good as it gets as they prepare to reopen on February 16th, when the lockdown restrictions in their area are lifted. There'll be some big changes, though, which include limiting capacity to 40% of what it usually is and enforcing a number of pandemic regulations.
Of course, we'll be encouraging people to exercise physical distancing, wear a face mask or a face covering over your nose and your mouth throughout the resort. And that includes the village area, lift lines on the chairlift.
Collingwood Mayor Brian Saunderson is also asking anyone considering visiting from other regions to abide by all lockdown restrictions in their area.
We're asking those in areas with higher infection rate to not come here unless they own property here and intend to stay here for longer than 2 weeks.
This affects areas like Toronto, Peel and York regions, which will remain in lockdown until at least February 22nd. He says he understands this could hurt business in an industry very important to his city, but he says it's necessary.
Health and safety are primary with the pandemic.
The good news is thousands of people will be going back to work across the province.
There's just over 10,500 people that are out of work right now who should be earning a living and not be on government services.
But the lockdown has already caused irreparable damage to the industry as a whole.
The money is significant. It's over $100 million. It's not recoverable. What this represents is an opportunity for our industry to get to break even.
At Blue Mountain, they say they're not looking back, only at the road ahead, which they hope is a long one.
The long-range forecast looks in our favor, so we know there's still a lot of winter left in this season.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
More than 5 years after a horrific car crash in Vaughan killed 3 young children, today their parents were devastated to learn the man who pleaded guilty to killing their kids while he was drunk behind the wheel will only serve about half his sentence behind bars. Talia Ricci has more on Marco Muzzo's parole hearing.
It was difficult to see Marco Muzzo's expression behind a mask and a face shield, but his voice was shaky when he spoke about his actions that led to the deaths of 9-year-old Daniel Neville Lake, his 5-year-old brother Harrison, their 2-year-old sister Millie, and the children's 65-year-old grandfather Gary Neville. The 34-year-old was granted full parole today. Both parents of the 3 children who were killed read victim statements. Edward Lake sharing he frequently reads his children's autopsy reports and requires assistance going out in public. His actions have caused me so much pain, so much loss, and so much sadness. It's scary when you want a hug from your children and you can't because they aren't there. It makes me cry and cry. Jennifer Neville Lake was tearful and angry as she delivered her statement. The thought of him being out on the street frightens me greatly, she said. A child laughing or someone saying mom and giving their mom a kiss can cause me to black out. Please do not give this drunk driver any more privilege than he's already received. Parole board members questioned Muzzo about his history with alcohol and previous traffic violations. He told them he's been sober since the crash and hopes to one day use his experience to educate kids. Muzzo spoke of the grief he carries, saying, "My heart bleeds every day knowing my actions killed their 3 beautiful kids, Daniel, Harry, and Millie, and their loving and probably awesome grandfather, Gary." Muzzo's lawyer told the board his client has made progress in counseling and highlighted his large support network. Muzzo's parole conditions require that he continue to participate in a treatment plan, not consume alcohol, and have no contact with the victims. Jennifer Neville Lake posted a photo on Twitter afterwards of her children's graves, saying, in part, "Nothing changed for me." Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Updates now on 2 ongoing investigations in Toronto, and police have identified the 2 men killed in 2 separate shootings from last night. The first happened in the Lawrence and Caledonia area, where officers responded to calls for the sounds of gunshots. Investigators say 23-year-old Michael Opong Birchie of Brampton was sitting in a vehicle with 1 other person when the car was hit by multiple bullets. Birchie was struck several times. Paramedics rushed him to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. Officers say they are looking for 2 suspects who were wearing all dark clothing and fled the area in a light-colored SUV. And in Scarborough, police have identified 62-year-old Cam Tan Tat of Toronto as the victim in last night's shooting near Lawrence and Pharmacy. Officers were called to a strip mall in the area at around 7 o'clock. The man was pronounced dead at the scene. Investigators are asking anyone in the area with security or dash cam footage from around the time of the shooting to contact them. Some financial relief tonight for self-employed Canadians caught up in confusion over COVID emergency benefit eligibility. The federal government now says some people will be left off the hook. The Prime Minister's announcement comes today as some self-employed people were facing thousands of dollars in repayment.
Today, I'm absolutely thrilled. And I'm thrilled not just because there are so many struggling self-employed individuals out there who now have just this huge load off their chest, but I'm also absolutely ecstatic about the fact that citizen action did work.
No kidding. And the government also says those who already repaid voluntarily will see the money returned to them. Late last year, CRA had sent letters to more than 440,000 Canadians telling them they may not have met the income eligibility criteria and would need to repay those benefits. In order to qualify, a self-employed person should have earned at least $5,000 in 2019 or in the last 12 months. The confusion had been whether that income was before or after taxes were deducted. Air Canada has told more than 1,500 of its unionized workers that they'll soon be out of jobs. The airline is also suspending service on 17 more routes starting next week. The company says it's a result of new travel restrictions and a dramatic reduction in demand for flying. 11 of the routes that have been canceled fly out of Toronto. Today is the 3rd anniversary of Samuel Brown's death. The blind, deaf, and nonverbal teen died at a provincially run school for the blind in Brantford. Tonight, his family is renewing calls for a coroner's inquest into the tragedy after new details were uncovered.
It is the wish of the parents, Mr. and Mrs. Brown, that every aspect of this process be transparent. They are committed to transparency. They have given up a lot of their rights to privacy in order to ensure that this tragedy never happens to anyone else ever again.
So Samuel Brown's family says there's been a breakthrough in the investigation of his 2018 death. However, they say they can't publicly reveal details of what that breakthrough is. The family's lawyer says they've waited for far too long for an inquest. According to the family, a preliminary coroner's report and the results of an autopsy offered conflicting causes for Brown's death. One describes the cause as pneumonia, while a coroner's statement says it was natural causes.
Asians are seen as carriers of a contagion, just simply because of what they look like.
After the break, Toronto teachers help make a new resource to tackle anti-Asian racism in the classroom. Details are coming up. Plus,
coldest air of the season coming towards the end of the week. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. I'll show you what those temperatures are going to look like coming up.
Welcome back. Asian people in the GTA have reported an alarming uptick in racist attacks against them since the pandemic began. Now, the Toronto District School Board has released a new resource to combat the problem. Jessica Ng takes a look at how parents and educators feel about the new tool.
Most parents are not equipped to do that. We're not trained. We don't really know how to address the issues.
Terry Chu is a parent to 5-year-old Joey and 3-year-old Julius. She says she's worried about her kids experiencing pandemic-related anti-Asian discrimination.
I've sat in on a few of my daughter's classes, and she's only in senior kindergarten. And they went around the room, they talked about racism. These conversations are uncomfortable, but they're very necessary.
Now, the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario and Toronto District School Board have partnered to create a nearly 100-page resource for teachers.
It starts with historical context, so kind of understanding where the history of anti-Asian racism, right before, even before Confederation up until now. It also really spells out some of the myths that we have.
Teacher Jason Toe helped to write the document, aiming to reduce anti-Asian racism, which has been on the rise. According to survey data from Statistics Canada, during the pandemic, the percentage of visible minorities who said they perceived an increase in race-related harassment is 3 times larger than the proportion among the rest of the population. Chinese people in Canada reported a 30% increase in harassment or attacks, with notable increases across the board for most Asian groups.
In crises like these, there are scapegoats. And in this particular turn, Asians are seen as carriers of a contagion, just simply because of what they look like.
The resource is available now on the TDSB's website.
I grew up here, we've all been through it, and we definitely want to make sure that this doesn't repeat.
Canada's largest school board says they started tracking hate-related incidents with a portal during the pandemic. They are expected to release a report about its findings on Thursday. Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
To Scarborough now, where transit riders are in for a rough ride ahead. The TTC expects to take the Scarborough RT out of service in 2023. That is 7 years before the new subway extension is scheduled to open. Nick Boisvert has details on a plan that could make things a little more bearable for riders in the interim.
The trains struggle in the winter and they're getting a little creaky. And very soon, Scarborough commuters won't have to worry about the RT anymore. Instead, they'll be on the bus, most likely for quite a long time.
Now we're going to have to go back to their residents and explain why they're going to have to ride buses for 7 years.
The TTC report last week calls for the aging line to be shut down in 2023, about 7 years before the Scarborough subway extension is supposed to open. Local councillor Paul Ainsley says there's a way to at least ease that pain.
So we have the right-of-way that the SRT is built on. Is there an opportunity to use that right-of-way on the SRT and rip out the tracks and put buses in?
Right now, it takes about 10 minutes to go from the Scarborough Town Centre to Kennedy Station on the RT. When the service ends in 2 years, the TTC says the trip will take 15 to 18 minutes on the bus. To shorten that a little more, Ainsley wants the city to consider a temporary bus rapid transit line. A so-called BRT would run on the same route and give vehicles their own lanes separate from normal traffic. A system like that already exists up on Highway 7 in York Region.
Specifically on this line of Scarborough, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to do it right.
This expert says it's a cheap solution that should be used more often.
Proper bus rapid transit could really solve the issue of mobility of Scarborough for the next 100 years. But we need to do a complete network.
But temporarily converting elevated stops like Midland Station for buses could pose a challenge. Instead, the TTC is recommending changes to help shuttle buses move more efficiently. That could include measures like priority signals and some new bus lanes. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
A few clouds out there tonight, but mostly clear skies as we look live at Toronto's harbor. And it definitely felt a bit warmer today than it has recently. Maybe that was courtesy of that beautiful sunshine that we had today. Colette Kennedy is here now with a look at what's to come and how chilly it'll get later this week. Hey, Colette?
Thanks, Chris. Well, you know what's coming our way. We've had the record-breaking cold across the prairies. We know our temperatures are going to be dropping off, but we'll really begin to feel that as we get closer to the end of the week. So Thursday night, Friday night especially, that ridge really dominant and some of that colder air really taking over even for the lower Great Lakes. Also the jet stream being our storm track, it's just a little bit further to the south, so main systems will tend to go with that, but we still get kind of dusted. It's close enough by, dusted with some light snow moving through. Now, some of the coldest air will be moving in for our ski hills operators who are making snow. It's going to keep that snow around, but what does that look like or feel like? This is just looking at our winter so far. I know technically November isn't winter, but just to give you an idea of the coolest temperatures we saw each month. End of January, almost down to -15. So far this month, back on Sunday, -13.4. Well, we're going to drop a few degrees cooler than that. So that's what's coming our way towards the end of the week. That makes today's daytime highs essentially balmy. -3 for Toronto and Oshawa and Windsor at -5. Barrie, you guys coming in today, -6. And we do still have some lake effect, but you'll notice the streamers don't carry that far. The winds aren't strong enough to really push it very far. So it's the areas prone to it. You continue to see this, but we're not seeing it widespread. This is a little system kind of clipping through as we go tonight into tomorrow. Maybe a dusting to about 1 centimeter there for Windsor over towards Chatham-Kent. Otherwise, it stays southward. The other area getting a little bit there is towards the Niagara region. We'll just see clouds increasing as we go into the afternoon hours in the GTA. So starting with some sun and then getting cloudier. Look at this tonight. Yes, I put cold in there. -15, feeling like -21 Windsor, even though it's not that the winds are all that strong. And then tomorrow, that 40% chance of flurries getting tagged by that system to the south, more of a 30% for Sarnia and over towards London as well. And still keeping that cold air there because you're really on the north side of that system. Tonight across the GTA, slightly better for the city, -11, but at Pearson, -12, feeling like -18 to near -20. And tomorrow, a few degrees cooler than our afternoon today. -4 downtown, but again, for Mississauga, I've got you at -5. And then I just want you to check out not just these overnight lows. There you go, Friday night, going cooler than we've been so far this season, but look at the daytime highs as well. These systems coming through, just giving us, Chris, like I said, what looks like some light snow, as long as that storm track stays just to the south of us.
That's not too bad. Thanks, Colette.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
Finally, tonight, Raptors 905 has been named the NBA's G League Franchise of the Year for the 2019-2020 season. The Toronto Raptors minor league affiliate is being given the annual award for its performance on the court, as well as its business development and community involvement. The team, which plays out of the Paramount Fine Food Center in Mississauga, saw an 11% increase in fan attendance last year. All-star Pascal Siakam, key point guard Fred VanVleet, and Canadian center Chris Boucher are among the program's graduates. Congratulations, guys. And that is our show for you tonight. I'll see you back here tomorrow at 11. And we'll leave you tonight with a look at the northern lights over Pine House Lake, Saskatchewan. And while it may look like a time lapse, the stunning images that you're seeing right now were captured in real time. Canada's northern latitudes and minimal light pollution make it optimal for viewing the dazzling display from autumn until late winter. Enjoy the show. And that is it for us tonight. Have a great night.